Welcome, folks. GoodLife Housing Partners, episode 49, season 2. Here we are in Los Angeles on a Monday, August 16th, doing a pod a little early today as I venture back out to Dallas in the middle of a couple deals out there, and it's going to be a travel week for me. I haven't done this in a couple weeks at least, maybe over a month. I haven't really hit the road. No real reason out of it. No like Delta variant fears. It's just been we wrapped up a bunch of deals through June and into July, and it's just been kind of the summer swoon. And so as we enter this mid-August, I'm gonna head back out to Dallas. Got a bunch of stuff to look at. A couple deals that we're heavily into at this point, but yeah, I'm excited to get out there. Don't have any real Delta concerns, but David Fong, where does this find you on Monday, August 16th?
You know, mid-August, we're about to start actually on a personal level. My daughter's about to go back to school for college. So
where?
Move at USC.
Favorite of mine.
Favorite of yours.
Come on down.
We also have a lot of assets.
Yeah, come on down.
And yourself. And she's moving in because last year, because of COVID, the campus was closed. So
nice.
She didn't get her full freshman experience. And
nice.
so tomorrow she is moving into her dormitory.
Amazing.
And so, as well as also in our student housing, move-in day is Wednesday.
Yes.
For our Las Vegas property. And,
yes.
And I think this weekend actually was our other USC properties we had to move in.
Yes.
So while summer is semi-over, I guess, we're about to head into, student housing is starting up the next season.
I wonder with climate change and everything, like if they'll ever change the calendars on some of this stuff, because like summer now goes well into September or even October.
Yeah, well, school definitely seems earlier this year because it
feels early too.
I keep remembering school being in September, so that's why I'm surprised that she's starting already. So.
A lot of schools actually started a week ago.
Yeah,
this is actually kind of not late, but this is more middle of the pack.
Well, public schools, which is interesting.
Public schools,
like City of LA and all these other schools have started. I'm surprised.
It's pretty interesting how that's happened.
Yeah. I know some of them are doing it COVID influence because they're trying to, I guess, maybe finish a little earlier to get people out of the schools for during winter, and so then that winter flu season they'll stay home and infect their families instead.
There you go.
Instead of other students.
There you go. The COVID will never go away, my friend. It's just here with us.
Yes.
So why don't we get into some themes here as we're kind of kicking off season 2, and this is really this podcast is to kind of we've kind of let it take a life of its own, but it's really kind of like an open forum for us to mostly discuss what we generally know best, which is real estate and specifically the worlds of multifamily or just housing in general. And then we also might share an opinion or two that we have figured out, or a statistic or something interesting we've come up with over the course of a week, whether it be in our reading or travels or in conversation. So that's really the point of it. It's a pretty open forum, free-flowing conversation between the two of us.
To the extent sometimes there'll be, insight, or they'll get some ideas and things hopefully from some of the things we talk about, more power to everyone. We want them to be empowered.
And usually I save it for the end of reaching out to us. But I think one of the things we're going to really try to make a bigger push for in this second season, as we're on YouTube and trying some other formats of getting this podcast and our GoodLife Housing brand and kind of platform out there, is really to engage more with hopefully not only our investors who we hear from, with a reasonable amount of communication, but just in general, people who are interested in the industry, whether it be investing or getting involved in the industry or whatever it may be. So I think this is a nice, hopefully it's a fairly easy platform or easy place that people can, ask a question or even send us a message or wherever that might be. And always, if you can, please do subscribe.
Well, questions are definitely welcome.
Questions are welcomed, and thoughts and comments are welcome too. So I think as we go into season 2, that's going to be one of our big pushes. So
what's your theme? What do you want to talk about?
Well, I think one of the things that has really been tough for us over the last couple of weeks has really been, I keep going back to it, has been really the extension of the moratorium. And I think you had a really good piece last week on, that a lot of it is, I think I was making the bigger issue of that. I don't think that some of those numbers are real. And I think it's mostly based on survey data as opposed to actual data. And so in surveys, you can really skew it by who you're surveying. Mm-hmm. But I think one of the things you raised was that maybe that's true, but I think a big part of it is that it's really based on states being unable to get the funds out. They're sitting on quite a bit of that $25 billion that was tacked into the last round of stimulus.
Yeah.
And so I think that's definitely true. And in fact, I saw something where I think Texas, I want to say Wyoming, really were the only two states that had actually done a lot of getting capital out, where the other kind of 48 were definitely
Yeah.
lagging.
Well, no, it's really embarrassing, and it's funny you mention it because I did come across a number from my home state. I'm originally from New York City, New York State, and I didn't realize that they said the number was, which is kind of boggling. New York City has gone up about $100 million, or excuse me, New York State has gone up $100 million. But that's out of 2.7 billion.
Oh yeah.
And so I was
3%.
like, God, that's so little.
Yes,
and it's crazy. And it really is kind of, when you think about it, it kind of infuriates me a little bit because it's embarrassing. There's so much money out there, and especially for guys like us, we're in real estate, we're landlords, and you have this law that's stopping us from normal operations, and at least try to soften the blow and help tenants, because that's your whole purpose of why you're doing this moratorium too. Then they should get that money out, and I heard something on the radio too about the city of LA. They're also complaining, wanting to know, okay, well, how many people you need to work, let's get the staffing up. And it just boggles me that when they first passed the legislation, okay, and it was very clear, okay, all this money, this $50 billion was coming to all the states, like, the government agencies, typical government bureaucracy to me is a huge failure of government. Like, why don't they just prepare, get ready to give out money and have a process? And it's just boggles me.
I don't know the answer to that. I don't think really anybody does at our level. But what I will say is, I don't think they realize the number of domino effects that happens when you extend these moratoriums. I think the easy thing to say is, oh look, there's a sad family, and if you don't have the moratorium, they're just gonna get evicted. When even that's not reality for the most part. That's just not reality. It's not how it works. Like in a state like California, even if you could do it, it takes months to get an eviction done. In a state like Texas or Arizona, it happens faster, but there are landing spots if people want them.
Yeah. Well, I think to your point, you mentioned this last week too. I mean, what California has done, is they've extended it not just to residential, it applies to commercial. But what I heard last week too also was, I didn't realize the city, so the states one, actually, California state's eviction moratorium expires in a few months. Yeah. But the city of LA, and I didn't realize the city of LA's one is actually a whole year later. And it just bothered me, like, wait, why are they a year? Why did they even do like an extra year even? Yeah. And then it goes back to, again, they still haven't distributed money either in the city of LA. So it's like, oh my God, these guys are fine. If you can accept, okay, for some weird reason, we're going to extend it.
So I'll tell you a counterpoint of this.
Why don't you distribute the money?
So we can say why and all this stuff, but the other effect here that is much harder for the average person to realize is that there has been a complete shift on how lending has occurred in these properties. Okay, to start, most of the student housing assets, and most of this is not moratorium driven, but it's part of it, that they're not getting any lending from any of the agencies, any of the government agencies, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, HUD, anything. So that's out. And more importantly, for market rate, it's basically gone. It's like a hard stop. There's lending going on, but it's minuscule anywhere. Where because of moratoriums and the amount of damage it's done to rent rolls and profit and loss statements and just overall properties, is the lack of clarity, especially in states like California, has created this sort of vacuum where the agencies used to be able to give really good rates and almost supplement our industry on the lending side. It's almost evaporated. Yeah. Where now all these debt funds, and we've used plenty of them in the last few months, they are now the leaders in this. And there's some good things about it, because that's private industry stepping up and seeing that there's a gap, but they're also tougher. Yeah. And they're not as easy to work with.
Yeah, especially when there's trouble. They're definitely not caring
trouble,
about
even
they're not
just
the
harder.
ones that look for relationships or care about.
They can be, they theoretically are, but they're not. And so there's all this domino effect that happens that I don't know if is Gavin Newsom, that is, thinking about any of these things. Or is he just let me get some more, voter appeal as I get into about to be recalled. Let me try and get a few more people to vote for me.
Well, it's not just Gavin. It's also like you got
and the city and state level,
and also the legislature.
Yeah.
Because
it's a cumulative
the
effect.
thing is, but there's not I guess the whole point is there's no comprehensive view or approach to it. It's just little, this great political soundbite, eviction moratorium, or but okay, but like you said, what about the financing? What about the impact on or at least where's the structure to get the money out? None of that extra foresight and comprehensive thinking and planning is happening.
I think even beyond the money, like once you get the money out, the reality is there's going to be pain that comes with this, and you're just better off dealing with this now than just like death by 1,000 cuts type of thing. Yeah. So it's like you might as well, if the building can't function, having a little money, getting a little bandage money doesn't save anything.
Well, what's interesting too, since I'm a lawyer from previous life, I've been looking at the legality of this whole eviction money. So I listened to some of the court cases, and the Supreme Court, U.S. Supreme Court, has already said that they question whether CDC has the authority to even legally do this. But what's interesting, I just read today, there was some appeals court that I think it was Washington D.C. They approved the moratorium in certain aspects, and so a local smaller federal judge, where a lot of real estate people in the private sector now filed lawsuits to really we've had enough, let's get rid of this thing, and because they really expected Biden not to extend it, and so they're kind of angry that he's extended it. And so, but then the local federal court, I'm surprised, actually kind of didn't do anything and actually supported it again. So it's just led to more ambiguity until you have another Supreme Court statement, at least from the law side. It's not going to go away. It's going to take, and the normal legal process itself is a slow process. And so unfortunately, it's going to be with us.
Well, I think that part of this is also I understand the legal technicality and all that, but part of it is just even what we're doing right now, talking about it this way, which I think is fairly honest, although we're obviously biased because we own multifamily. People don't talk about it this way. People don't talk about, okay, we have a problem, and we're just making the problem really worse by kicking the can down the road.
Yeah.
Because in general, what we're doing is we're talking about something that most people are like, okay, you're just taking poor people and throwing them on the street. And while you and I both know, and most people will know that that's not the reality, the reality is if you're in this industry, it is extremely difficult to evict in tenant-friendly states. In property owner states, it can be easier, and much easier in some states. But even then, there's a variety of things most tenants can do if they're interested or wanting to do to work these things out before they actually have to be out on the street. And I challenge whatever representative or whatever state or whatever city, you explain to me all those things, and then that family still gets put on the street when their parents are working or mom is working, whatever the story is. That's the reality. People don't want to talk about it. And people in our position in general are like, well, what's the point? Well, am I going to change a bunch of people's opinion? I don't even know if I can change the opinion of people in my office. Yeah. If I really put it to it, I think they'll agree with me because of the position I'm in. But in general, I don't know. Because there's a stigma that you're just going to kick out poor people, and that's not the reality. And the reality, if you really look at it, is that, and I'm just going anecdotal, but I see far more buildings with far higher income earners that are not paying rent and on CDC notices than on all the other buildings that have lower income earners.
Yeah.
That's the reality.
It'd be interesting for someone to really do a detailed study on that.
I mean, that'll be, that's the reality, but I tell you, that's really what's happening here. People just don't want to talk about it. Yeah. And when you do, it's just you want to just approach it just be gentle and let's move on. Let's figure out what we need to do. But I think there's starting to be, I think one of the things that we've been sort of talking about is as this September comes closer and you have a number of things that are going to start to really make it, come to an end, unemployment will come to an end September 6th. Schools will be in session. College football will be back. And NFL will be in full. So there's just a number of things that are all happening in September. Your Congress will be back. The markets will no longer be on vacation. I mean, there's just a number of converging events, and I keep pointing to September is going to be one of these months that you've not seen before with daily action, daily news stories.
Although there is some, September is also a month where most companies were supposed to be back.
Yeah.
So now because of Delta and all that, you do see everyone, even at least law firms and other groups I've talked to, everyone's pushing it back. Okay, now it's October. and stuff. You know, one interesting thing, and we touched on this a little bit too, about, you know, Zoom free Fridays and stuff, and just I see it again more and more things about, you know, people being concerned about sort of the mental impact of COVID. And now I saw a number of tech companies now are actually, there's more of a focus on, okay, people being burnt out. And there's regular burnout, and there's stress, and then there's the exacerbation due to COVID. And so now a number of companies are starting to do these, like, it's interesting, they're starting to do like these forced vacations, where, like, you know, you have to, if you take, you know, even Price Waterhouse, accounting firm, if you take a week off, they'll pay you actually extra money to take a week off. And then other companies now, you know, because you're a lot of companies in the corporate culture, there's that, you know, the, you know, work hard till exhaustion kind of mentality. And so some companies now, like Adobe,
the 996.
When some are also doing where global, like, okay, every third Friday, you know, the whole company shuts down. I don't care. Yeah, I think.
And they go to Harlem and plant trees.
Or they'll have company-wide, like, weeks, you know, in a week, every year, like, okay, the whole company, no one's working, no one's allowed to do emails.
Do you think?
Like,
I think it's just. I just think of this, like, in the last week I've heard so many things about long COVID.
Yeah.
And there's a part of me that thinks that, like, Zoom might have caused long COVID.
Yeah, they definitely talk about pandemic
somehow
Zoom
correlated,
stress.
like long COVID. Like I mean, am I sitting here after getting COVID earlier in the year that I have, like, long COVID now because I don't like Zoom calls as much? Is those somehow correlated?
It could. I'm trying to think.
It's a joke. Sorry. Maybe that's long COVID. You just did a bunch of Zoom calls and you're just, like, now stuck with long COVID.
Possibly. But you know what's interesting too is I even saw something like, I didn't realize, and I never thought about this because I'm not in the entertainment industry. Like, they also talked about people now who are, like, actors and just productions when they're out there filming a movie or TV series, all this. Apparently there's a lot of long hours and tough work and there's a lot of stress, and now they talk about how, like, it's become a normal now. They hire these therapists.
Life coaches.
And therapists and people who show up, like, even before they start the filming, they
get you in the right mindset.
They get you in the right mindset just for the acting, and then also because of this, like, stress of pandemic and long COVID or whatever you call it, like they're getting help, and they you know, it's a normal thing now, which is interesting too. Which on the plus side, I was seeing too in LA, that I didn't realize that production business is back. Like,
it is.
Like, there are a couple of companies who are buying and building brand new, which hasn't been done in LA for a long time.
For years,
Soundstage studios,
that size, the size that you're talking about.
like the large multiple stages of like 45,000 square feet.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's obviously a good thing economically because all the jobs it creates, but I guess also all these soundstages and other groups.
Well, one of the things that I've realized, and I now is like a lot of people are like, how much content is enough content? Like, how many new movies can you watch? How many things can you find on Netflix? How many Amazons can you watch? And I was like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And then somebody on some other podcast was explaining it, like, it used to be you'd have 4 channels, and those 4 channels actually had, like, a time when they were off, okay? Like, they would literally go off in the middle of the night. Like, there was no channels. And then you had cable, and now you had, like, 200-300 channels. But even then, you only had, like, these 4, 5, 6 hours there of prime time. And that was when you had to get your show in. But now, there's like millions and billions of channels. There's no prime time hours. And so, like, actually, the thirst for content is pretty insatiable. Like, you can just keep on adding more and more content, and all you gotta do is find the right niche to watch that. And that makes sense. And now, like, go make more sound stages.
And just to age myself,
Please do.
So when you had in the old days with TVs, even when we had black and white TVs before color TVs were out there. You're
back
right.
in the days of the Depression.
No, not that far back.
Cabbage soup.
But in the 70s and 80s. But, you know, you're right. Like after midnight, or, you know,
show up.
So you basically. Or you'd have these weird shows that no one really watched.
Twilight Zone. That was like a big show.
People who were insomniacs watched. But then you
yeah.
literally also had stations shutting off, and it would just be the little like emergency code and a great beep. It would just be that.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it's like some of our assistant producers have never seen that before. So
they've never dialed into a beep like that.
But and like you said, it used to be Thursday night where NBC actually made a ton of money back in I guess that was the 90s or 80s. You know, that was the prime time where everyone was paying up for Bill Cosby and Cheers and putting their ads on.
And then remember the Friday, TGI Fridays,
TGI Fridays, Seinfeld, and all that.
They made a restaurant out of this thing, you know, it's insane.
Well, you know, it related to, I saw another interesting statistic. I was reading about Disney, you know, major company. Yeah. So it used to be that with their stock price, you know, the only company or business that mattered was their TV and cable assets. You know, like the Disney Channel and ESPN and all that. That was by far the most profitable business they had. And it used to be like, you know, if it just dropped a small bit in revenues every quarter, that their stock would go. Either it'd go up crazy or it'd go down crazy. And recently, their revenue dropped 33% from a year ago. It's still super profitable, $2.2 billion for the quarter, just for the quarter. But that didn't move the stock at all. And what actually moved the stock was when Disney Plus announced that they had signed up another 12 million subscribers for the quarter. Unbelievable number. And so they're up to 116 million now, and then the stock jumped 5%.
Yeah,
over something crazy like that. Number. And that's a business at Disney that's still not profitable. Yeah, and they don't know when it's going to be profitable.
And maybe they'll reach it.
So that's why it's interesting. You talk about like people's expectations and things now.
Well, I think that this content has just become so not easy to make, but people are making it so fast, and generally it can be good, but it's just nichey. It's become so nichey. Like they just figure out like what you kind of like, and then they hook on to it. Figure out what I kind of like, and they hook onto it. And like it's become like so. Like I actually really feel sad for like things that are antiquated because they're gonna get antiquated so quickly now. Like let's start the numbers round because I actually have a great number. I was gonna go with more of a real estate number. But this is gonna hurt you. It's gonna astound you and hurt you at the same time. So I know you're a real baseball fan in the office, and so you heard the Field of Dream game last week.
I watched it.
Good for you.
I watched the highlights. Well, I discovered it on YouTube. Yeah. I didn't realize this was even happening.
That's part of the problem is you discovered it on YouTube. So that was the most watched baseball game in 16 years.
Oh, it was. Okay.
Okay, so worst watched in 16 years because they literally were having it in a cornfield in Iowa. And that's where Kevin Costner did Field of Dreams. It's the old movie from like the 90s or something. Anyway,
30 years ago.
Yeah, it's like the 90s. He did this. It was like one of his first really like after The Bodyguard or before The Bodyguard. Anyways, it put him on the scene as like this really cool, like kind of middle America guy. And like good looking middle America guy. And so anyways, so they had this, it was only 8,000 people and tickets started at $400. By the time they opened the gates, those tickets were $4,000. And it was the highest watched baseball game in literally 16 years. Now, the problem is like you watching it on YouTube are slowly, like basically it's, the product is still good, but more and more people are just catching highlights on YouTube, which is not great for baseball and its billions of dollars of TV contracts because kind of takes away from the whole thing, right? You can't sell as many ads on the YouTube.
Well, it goes back to what you're saying about the algorithms. Like, I just happened to see on the algorithm on YouTube. I said, hey, what's this Field of Dreams thing with Kevin Costner? And I remember the movie.
And he was in the thing. He was
in the thing. I said, oh, Kevin Costner went back to that field or something? And so I played it, and it was like a preview of it. And then I was like, oh, there's actually going to be a game. And it was also my alma mater, New York Yankees against Chicago White Sox. So I said, oh. And then I found that it led me to another link that had highlights from the game and then the opening ceremony where Kevin comes walking out saying all these nice little things about baseball and America's pastime and all this and walking through the cornfields and then coming out to the crowd and stuff.
And it was, I mean, I saw a little glimpse. It was actually a really good game.
It was a good game, especially at the end.
And then it became like a big ninth inning and everything, and it was interesting. Joe Buck broadcasted and everything. But the problem with it is that like baseball is going to need to do so many of those things to stay even even relevant to your age group. Forget about my age group or God, these guys' age group. And that's like really challenging. Like I can't imagine that challenge in another like 5 years when those baseball contracts start to go up and they're like, yeah, those 80 games, 80 home games, 160 games, yeah, I don't think those are worth $1 billion anymore.
Yeah. Well, they'll definitely do something. I agree with you economically. I don't. Where I disagree with you is I do think they'll still be interested in it.
Yeah. Because you know a lot of people in their 20s and 30s.
My generation will
age out. That's a problem.
But you know what's interesting too in that field was that aerial shot when they got a little wider and you see. Because I thought it was really going to be just isolated.
No.
In this little cornfield town, but then as you move out, then you realize, oh, okay, it's kind of like closer to the city.
Yeah.
There's some stuff
I
nearby.
think it was in Ames or something like that. I don't know where it was,
but it looked actually cool. I actually
No, it's cool.
I actually felt like, oh, I said, I wonder, if they have other games there, maybe I'll go there.
No, just that one game, but they should actually. They, like literally every team should play there.
Well, Costner said it. I guess when he talked a little back, he got interviewed by A-Rod and all the other baseball commentators on ESPN. He made this comment about how like when he first finished the movie 30 years ago, he thought they had made something special, and they told whatever the city or town or whoever owned it, like oh, you shouldn't just tear down this baseball field. You should think about doing something. And then they built a more modern field where they filmed this. And the funny part was he said that one of his close friends was the architect who designed it, but his best friend never told him about it. It was like this secret. And then all of a sudden, when it happened, his architect friend called him and told him, hey, by the way, are you... And at the time, Kevin Costner hadn't been invited to show up for the MLB game.
Oh,
and
really?
He said he had heard about it. He says, I think they're going to invite me, but I haven't been called by MLB yet.
Oh.
And then the guy said, why, you know about it? He goes, yeah, I designed it. And he was like, Joe, you're like my best friend. You kept this secret from me.
Yeah.
Do you realize it's my movie?
Yeah.
This and this.
That's
And
funny.
so it's a funny little side story. But I thought it was a
So
pretty
anyways,
cool
my
game.
number of the week was 4,000. To see a 10x increase in like basically a midsummer game takes like a lot of things to go right, and so the Field of Dreams made a 10x increase on season 6. So that's 4,000 my number of the week.
Yeah. My number is a little more pedestrian and real estate related, which is lumber.
Yeah.
We talk about commodities, inflation, and the lumber price skyrocketed, and it's been going down. So just to put in context, the number is $480.40 per thousand board feet. And that number in May, when it was peaked, everyone was freaking out, and construction costs were so crazy. It was 1,670.
Wow.
So it was a lot higher,
4x.
almost 4x higher. And then in June it was 710, which is still pretty high. And because normally this is we're talking about like in the $200 number.
It's more than double.
So it's heading down. So everyone's excited again because now they're thinking okay, they can now price out development of apartments, and so hopefully.
I think a lot of that coming down has been people tapping the brakes. I mean, we've tapped the brakes on projects. Yeah. So I think a lot of it's been like demand has been tapped down. Like let's wait till the fall.
Well, what would be interesting to see too is now they're also talking about all these. They're expecting prices to rise a lot in Christmas and after because of all these disruptions to the supply chain, especially in the ports.
Yeah.
And as we said ports are delayed, and one of the interesting facts I found was China had this port where I guess China's got a zero tolerance policy for COVID, and third largest port in China, which is this port in China, which is third largest, busiest port in the whole world. That ships a huge amount of goods for containers. They handle about 28.72 million TEUs, which are 20 foot equivalent. Those are the little big containers.
I can really picture that.
And so they shut it all down. They shut down this building. Just all the ships are all backed up this terminal.
That's
just
great
because one guy got COVID.
Yeah.
And so they're saying like this, and then another ship got stuck in the Suez Canal. They're saying like, expect prices to go up. For Christmas. So you better buy your Christmas toys, holiday toys, for your kids earlier this year.
Well, until Amazon tells me the problem, I don't think there's one. So I'll leave it with that. All right, I got some good content. I've realized over the last like 3 weeks that in the midst of midsummer baseball and boring ass Olympics, that I've been watching a lot of NBA Summer League.
Okay.
And I actually didn't realize how much of it I was watching until I heard some other guys talking about it. I'm like, dude, I've been watching a lot of that too. And then I realized like it's because like you can't really watch. It's becoming a thing actually. It's like because there's like a handful of players that you kind of know from college basketball, and then now they're playing in summer league, and like there's always like some cool rapper or something, and like I don't know, I've been watching it just in bits and pieces, but I'm like, and then I heard other guys talking about it too, and I'm like, this is actually kind of a thing because there's such a gap in sports programming from like July-ish to like August somewhere, and like so someone should fill that gap because like like most of us that aren't your age are not watching baseball or Field of Dreams for that matter, so. There's like a huge gap that someone can be like, we're gonna have a 6-week blank season, and you'll get a bunch of people like me to probably watch it. But
well, did you watch the the Rams and the Chargers this week?
So I watched bits and pieces of all the preseason games, but I really didn't watch anything that was that interesting to me. In fact, I watched SportsCenter for the first time because I wanted to see bits and pieces.
Because I did actually listen to that parts of that game because I was driving and I happened to turn on ESPN. I was curious what was on.
I thought you just listened to your home.
Yeah.
You just like put an old time radio on, just AM radio. You're like, where's Jared Goff?
Yeah.
That's funny. And the other thing I watched was Modern Love. It's a series on Amazon, season 2. Great writing, all stories about love and just kind of quirky Amazon-y things with actors that you probably know that be like, oh, I've seen that person before. It's good. Your content?
Once again, I just watched my little mindless movies, and so I saw a Mel Gibson movie that I didn't realize Mel Gibson had made with Kate Bosworth called Force of Nature, situated in Puerto Rico, about a Category 5 storm, and they're all trapped in a building. And so it was interesting.
Mel saves the day, I hope.
Well, yeah, there were some criminals in the building trying to find some Nazi artwork, and they were running around the building, kind of Die Hard like.
I have an upgrade this week. I am back into gym classes. I went into Orange Theory. Well, classes have been back, but I went to Orange Theory because there's one across the street, right where I live, and the gym mask requirement has come back very strong.
Okay.
And I'm not like a gym mask person. Like, it's pretty hard for me to wear a mask and go running and stuff. And with the heat outside, I can't like run that like far or that long with like 90 some odd degree of heat. So I'm like, so Orange Theory doesn't make you wear the mask. It's like, that's good. And it was just good to be in like a classroom environment where people are like kind of, you're
Wait,
like.
what class did you do?
Orange Theory.
Is that the name of the specific?
It was the name of like these gyms.
But what was the actual class?
Well, the whole concept is Orange Theory is like you do this like running and rowing. It's like 15 minutes of exercise.
Oh, okay.
But the thing is, they put a heart rate monitor on you, and you're like monitoring your heart to get into the orange zone, because that's the best zone of where you're gonna burn the most calories.
Okay.
So it's like 140, 150 heartbeats per minute or something like that.
Got it.
And so, but they put everyone's damn heart rate up there on this monitor.
Oh, so
how many calories you're burning?
Watching everyone's monitors.
And you want, I mean, if you're like me, yeah, you're gonna watch. You're like, oh yeah, I'm doing okay, and then you're like, oh man, I'm not really burning much over there. I should really run harder. So I was like, that's actually kind of good. I mean, I don't know if everyone's watching, but I know I was like, because there was a while I was just like stuck in the gray and blue zone, which is like you're not really like working too hard, and I'm like, dude,
do they actually move you, like, they rank you?
I think they used to do that. I read about it. I think they used to do that. And now I think it's just you just watch and like there's just like you're like, oh, because then there's like these things where you get into the orange zone, you get a point or something. I don't know. But it was good to be in like a semi-competitive environment. It was kind of different. I'll do it again. It was good.
Okay.
Any updates for you?
Well, not like yours. I did go to the gym, but I don't do cardio like you, and I was wearing my mask, but the gyms were much more crowded, so it wasn't as uncomfortable wearing the mask.
Yeah, that's very true. Any upgrades though?
No, that's the only upgrade.
Just good movies. Good movies in the Field of Dreams. Okay.
So enjoy my baseball.
All right, folks. We'll keep it short this week. I'm traveling. I'll see you next Monday for episode 50. Should we like do something for that? That'd be amazing. All right. Anyways. Final last words, David, before I get a parking
Be
ticket.
safe and get vaccinated, everyone.
Yeah, let's end this COVID thing. We're done. Thanks, folks.
Thank you.